Welcome back, Honors. All right, can you say hey, Pierre? What's up, buddy? Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. All right, so the big thing about it is, though, it's like, yeah, I know it's a little bit weird. Like, Mr. Terry does not miss work, but you know what? I'm currently sitting in a car, actually driving on my way right now out to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then on to the Grand Canyon, which, if you're looking to, forward to it, you actually can sit back. I'm going to, take some drone footage of it and stuff and post it on my YouTube channel and things like that, so you can actually see it or, some point if you're interested or want to. It's not required or anything. It's just something I'm doing for fun. But the big thing is, yes, you are currently sitting in class on a Friday watching a flip for a sub-assignment since I'm not there. But we have to keep pushing forward. I know this seems really weird because Mr. Terry's sitting at his house right now in a hoodie, and it's a Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Yeah, for any of y'all that don't remember that Vine, you need to go look that one up. But the big thing about it is, yeah, I'm recording this on a Wednesday, getting it prepped for Friday, so y'all have to make sure that you're doing your assignment appropriately, okay? So the big thing about it is you had a warm-up to do before you started this thing, and it was all relating to the stuff that we're about to get into in this next unit, right? And we're now moving into Unit 5, okay? And so Unit 5, the last unit, before we actually get into the rest of the end of the semester and also going into our first set of exams, is the Renaissance and the Reformation, right? So Unit 5, go ahead and title your new section into notes, Renaissance and Reformation, okay? So the thing about it is, if you need to know how to spell Renaissance, it's right there. And something else you're going to notice is actually, if you go ahead and look onto the next part of your sub-assignment, you're going to be doing a Renaissance art presentation, right? Where you're going to become an expert in a piece of Renaissance art that I've actually already assigned to you. And now when I say become an expert in it, you're going to be able to have to give a very, very good, concise, about 5 to 7 to 10 minute presentation on a piece of artwork, its symbols, where it is, where it was located, etc., etc., etc. You're more than welcome to send me some emails over Thanksgiving break if you have any particular questions. But the big thing is also, if you want to reach out to some of your academic friends, they have already done this. It is really not a difficult thing, except theirs counted for a test grade when they paired it with another thing. Y'all's is going to be a double quiz grade, okay? So the big thing about it, though, is we are moving forward. So big thing, after you finish this flip, go ahead and start looking up a bunch of information about your artwork, right? Use Khan Academy, use YouTube, use all these different sources, but go ahead and start familiarizing yourself with your artwork, right? But to delay no further, let's go ahead and dive headfirst into the Renaissance, right? Which, of course, in French means rebirth. And I know that Damari already knows that, right? Because she brought it up and she said, thank you, Doc, right? Doc is the man. Fine Arts Survey taught her a lot, right? So the big thing about it is the Renaissance does mean rebirth. But here's the better question. I don't know if Doc necessarily taught you this, though, Damari. What does, that rebirth phrase mean? What is specifically being reborn? What's being reborn, Pierre? Do you know what's being reborn in the Renaissance? Oh, thank you. Well, what's being reborn in the Renaissance? Oh, big yawn. What's being reborn in the Renaissance is the attributes, intelligence, and ideas of the Greeks and the Romans, right? Because the big thing that we have to understand is we just took our test on the Middle Ages, right? And the Middle Ages was that period of disorder, limited learning, bad leadership, poor economics, and things like that. But the big thing to understand going forward is that we're seeing a return, a resurgence, a jumping back of all the smart, intelligent, and great ideas of the Greeks and the Romans that were lost during the Middle Ages, right? The things that made the Greeks and the Romans great and smart and intellectual are going to be coming back again during the Renaissance. Hence why we refer to that era as a rebirth, right? And also it's a rebirth of economics, a rebirth of a lot of different stuff. But we're going to get into all those concepts right now. So big thing that you're going to notice right now is you're going to, some of y'all probably already paused this. You already jotted all this stuff down. You didn't need to, okay? You really only needed about 3 of the things that stood out to you from each of these lists, okay? You only needed 3 things. You didn't need both whole lists. But basically, remember, when we talked about the Middle Ages, why were the Middle Ages called the Middle Ages? Because they were between 2 key other time periods in Western civilization's history. You had the ancient time periods, which, of course, in Western civilizations includes Greece and Rome. Then you had the Middle Ages, which is the transitional phase for Europe, Western Europe particularly, following the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, and then getting into the Renaissance period, which begins the modern era, right? So this is the big thing that you have to understand with the Renaissance period, okay? You got to be able to look back to Greece and Rome and understand why they were so intelligent, right? So just jot down 3 particular things from either of these lists, as in give me 3 things from Greece, 3 things from Rome, okay? Because you will need to kind of understand them and be able to reference them whenever you actually are doing your Renaissance Reformation test and also going into the exam, right? So the big thing about it is the Greeks were well known for a lot of intelligent things, including philosophy, that of Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Diogenes, Heraclitus, a lot of other famous philosophers in totality, bringing rise to rationalism and empiricism, right? You've got history under Herodotus. Remember when we talked about ancient Egypt and how that Greek historian said, oh, the Egyptians plant with such ease. That was Herodotus, right? He was an ancient Greek. They got theater, organized theater inside of ancient Greece, democracy, architecture, the Olympics, science and mathematics are having their birth in the Western civilizations in the Greek Empire and the Greek era. Well, not the Greek Empire, but the Greek era, right? So the Romans also are going to have a massive amount of intelligence, as you all know, because I love teaching about the Romans. They have organized military, the Republic period. All roads lead to Rome. Aqueducts, Molly Jernigan, you see that right there? They've got a 3-branch government system, including consuls and senators and tribunes and a dictator as well. They have Roman law and even the Julian calendar, named after none other than Julius Caesar. Yes, the ancient Romans, the fantastic people that they were. And then we moved into the Middle Ages, all right? So now, the thing about the Middle Ages was, if you didn't notice, it's not my favorite unit to teach, right? I don't find it that fascinating. I don't find it that interesting. I think the 100 Years' War and Joan of Arc's kind of cool. I think the Black Death's kind of cool. But other than that, it's just kind of a lot of, like, Europeans were having a bad time, and this is how they fix things, right? So it's just kind of a transitional period. It's really all it is, right? It's a transitional period after the fall of Rome. It's a period known and defined by limited learning, low economics, established a wealthy and political hierarchy of the Catholic Church, right? What I mean by a wealthy and political hierarchy is like a wealthy politicized hierarchy in the Catholic Church, right? Because as we remember with papal supremacy, as well as many other different facets of the Catholic Church, they are becoming a political body and entity within that of the Western European like sphere during the Middle Ages. And you'll actually see that when we talk about Italy here in a little bit, because like the Papal States is literally a region of Italy, a city-state of Italy that was controlled by Rome and the Pope, right? So why does the Pope have like governmental control over like a military and mercenaries and all that stuff? That's a product of the Middle Ages, right? But it's also important not to forget, which is why we have stars down here, that the Byzantinians did hold on to a lot of like stuff and a lot of Western intelligence all the way up until the 1400s. You're squiggling a lot today. You're squiggling a lot. All right, so now, I know, it's Sreethi boy. Now, the big thing, though, is speaking of those Byzantinians, right? This right here being a Byzantinian mosaic piece of art, right? So as we know, or as you should have picked up on, when we were talking about the Byzantinians, with their beautiful architecture, the Hagia Sophia, all those great things, Justinian's code, that civil law code and things like that. Excuse me. The Byzantinians were highly, highly intelligent, right? Very, very solid, and they kind of held on and kept everything safe that the ancient Romans lost in the Western fall, right? So all of those ideas from Western Rome that the Romans originally came up with got moved over to the Byzantine Empire, right? All the books, the scrolls, the texts of people like Livy and Pliny the Elder and all those different other individuals get moved over to the Byzantine for safekeeping, right? And during the process of when Constantinople was beginning to fall, the Arabs began to grab onto a lot of those things and translate a lot of them into their actual native Arabic. For example, Arabs refer to Aristotle as the first philosopher because Arabs actually translated Aristotle's works into Arabic and learned a lot of things from him during their Muslim golden age, right? During the Islamic golden age. So the thing about it is the Byzantine did play a big role in actually preserving a lot of those pieces of intelligence left behind by the ancient Romans, right? And allowing for that Renaissance to happen and for the Reformation to go forward, not the Reformation, but for the Renaissance to jump forward, giving rebirth to all those Roman ideas. Thank you, Byzantine, for holding on to all that stuff. The other big thing to understand is that, yes, I know I still sound a little ridiculous, but at least you can actually hear me, which is good. But the Middle Ages did see massive growth in economics from early to high periods, right? In the early Middle Ages, you saw the establishment of like the Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne, Clovis, the Frankish Kingdom, things like that. You saw the Catholic Church starting to kind of really gain its infrastructure. You saw it kind of like the church bodies becoming a really big thing inside of medieval communities, the feudal system growing, the manor system growing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then we had the late Middle Ages, and that all that economic growth going into the high Middle Ages kind of dipped a little bit, right? If you were to actually kind of draw a like economic graph of what happened during the Middle Ages, you'd have all this growth going into the high Middle Ages, right? All this growth going into the high Middle Ages, Pierre. And then you'd see a dip, right? And so the dip in the economies, though, happened because of the Black Death, the Avignon papacy, the 100 Years' War, right? All these different things are going to cause a dip. Go back. A dip in these different economic systems. Oh, let me get back, caught back up again. There we go. Yeah. So if you're looking at the Middle Ages periods, right, it was like early Middle Ages was right here, and then was the high Middle Ages. Oh my God, this is so ugly. And then the late Middle Ages, and then we got the Renaissance period, right? So it was like making money, making money, making money, making money, making money, making money, late Middle Ages going down, and then it hits the Renaissance period and goes, boom! Like so, and then everybody starts making way more money than anyone expected. Now, the thing about it to understand going into this whole, oh, wait, close, go away. The whole thing about it to understand going into this whole big thing is that the events like these are what caused that dip in economics. The Black Death, the 100 Years' War, the Avignon Papacy. And I don't need to explain the Black Death because we did talk about the economics and how that limited trade for a time period that was coming back during the High Middle Ages, right? I don't need to talk about the 100 Years' War because you know the 100 Years' War caused a massive reduction in trade and trade goods and things like that. Also because it was hand in hand with the Black Death. This one is the one that you don't know of, right? The Avignon Papacy. Now, the Avignon Papacy is another image of how the Catholic Church was getting a little bit out of hand at one point. Not so much the Catholic faith. There was nothing wrong with the Catholic faith at the time. It was just the fact that there was some crazy political stuff. Start wiggling. There was some crazy political stuff. I want to tell you about the Avignon Papacy, all right? Pierre, you have to know that there were multiple popes at one point. So he's fine. I don't hurt the dog. He's really, really sweet. Oh, thank you. So now the big thing, though, is the Avignon Papacy is literally what I just said to Pierre. There were multiple popes of the Catholic Church at one point, mainly due to the fact that there was a big confusion there was a rivalry between the French king and this other pope, and he abducted him, and then they died, and then they elected an Italian pope, and then the Italians were like, oh, just kidding, this guy's not that nice, and then they picked a French pope named Clement, and Clement was the pope in France, and then there was a pope in Italy, and then randomly there was a pope in the HRE. So under the Avignon Papacy, just write corruption, multiple popes, right? That's going to lead to a bunch of economic dips and stuff like that. But the thing about it, what ended up happening is surprisingly, remember I had the big bow, going up with the Renaissance? Surprisingly, economics leapt forward after these terrible events, right? They took a dip and a hit in the late Middle Ages, but the second you start getting close to the Renaissance period, the economics just went wham and just skyrocketed, right? A lot of it having to do with the reduction in population that had occurred during the High Middle Ages during the medieval warming period, right? Remember we talked about that with the Black Death, how there were really, really warm temperatures during the High Middle Ages, and then they started to come down, caused a famine, actually led to low crop yields and stuff like that, making people more susceptible to that. Well, also, since there was more people in Europe than the area could handle, those people were making money, and they were reducing economic competition because there were so many people that could provide the same services, right? 100-Year War, same thing. It's going to reduce the population of Europe. So I'm trying to get away. All right, so love me. All right, so now the big thing though, also the Avignon Papacy is going to lead to it as well. So the thing is though, is surprisingly enough, after these events are finally settled and the population begins to stabilize a little bit, is the economics are going to leap forward, right? Now a lot of that has to do with the fact though also is because the rise of guilds and the return of trade following them, right? So you don't know what a guild is yet, but we're going to go ahead and talk about what it is right now. So notice I had that in a different color. So this actually is a very important point and a title going forward. So what's a guild though, right? So following these terrible instances, now even before, you saw the rise of these little groups called guilds, right? So guilds are groups of craft makers or merchants that organize together to set a price on their products. So notice we have two types of guilds, right? And this is the way that they work, okay? So let's say hypothetically we're looking at y'all's class, and let's look at a section of people in class. Let's use the girls towards the back corner, right? So we've got all of these different people that sit in the back and they do things, right? We've got Emma Wynn, and we got Rebecca McKenna, and then we've got Cobb, and then we've got Marissa, and then we got Giselle, right? 5 different individuals that live back there that are making different items. We're going to say that they're cobblers, right? They make shoes, okay? So let's say, though, hypothetically, what ends up happening, and we're going to add Zoe Valley in there, too. So we have a nice 6 number, a nice divisible by 3 number, right? So what ends up happening, though, is they're all making their shoes. They're making a decent bit of money. It's the High Middle Ages. They're moving forward, right? But then the Black Death hits. Then the 100 Years' War War hits, and then all these things happen. And then 30% of them die, or actually we'll say 50% of them die from these diseases, right? And so you lose McKenna, Emma, and Zoe Valley all died from the plague. Actually, McKenna, though, actually died during the 100 Years' War. It was crazy. She was with Joan of Arc. She knew her. She high-fived her. It was a ridiculous thing. So what ends up going forward, all you're left with is Giselle, Cobb, and Marissa. Giselle, Cobb, and Marissa are still cobbling. They're still making their product. But now they're getting paid a little bit more money because there's less of them to provide the service. But then Cobb and Marissa have a genius idea. They're going to form a group. And that group is what you refer to as a guild. They come together, they share their experiences, they share their expertise, they make their product even better. And that's going to increase the price of their product, and it's going to help them set a higher tone of standard, and it's going to help them set a price, right? So this guild ends up making them way more money than it was ever supposed to. That's a craft guild because they're making a product. But the big one, the most important one, is merchant guilds, right? Merchant guilds are full of people like the other girls in class, right? We've got people like Lucy and Nina and Christina Garcia who are like, oh, we have ships and vessels, so let's be traders and go pick up goods from the Byzantine and the Ottoman Empire, and we'll start moving them over the Mediterranean and selling all these items that everybody wants so bad, right? So you've got craft guilds and merchant guilds popping up, which is stimulating the economy in the late Middle Ages following those disasters. And then you're going to see a massive return in trade because of those merchants. Merchant guilds are going to begin to import all kinds of new goods into Europe. You're going to see teas, coffees, silks, warehouse inventory, porcelain, luxury items starting to move their way into Europe because of these merchant guilds, right? Craft guilds begin to specialize their products and sell those goods to the merchants to go off and sell as well. But the big question you have to ask yourself is yes, trade is coming back. Yes, guild is coming back. Yes, that's stimulating the economies of the Renaissance period. Okay, you are just all over the place. We're going to go sit you down for... No, we're not. We're actually just going to keep hanging out. So the big thing about it, though, is where is all of this happening? Well, the thing about it is if you recognize where these two people are, I would not recommend swimming in those canals. They're kind of gross. Actually, I think this is during a flood. The thing you need to understand is it's all taking place mostly within one quote-unquote, country inside of Europe. Well, it's the Italian Peninsula. You know what I mean? So everybody would tell you that the Renaissance started in Italy, right? Problem is that Italy, it's the Italian Peninsula. Because as you can see by looking at this map really quick, Italy wasn't a big contiguous country at the time, right? It wasn't an area of a bunch of, it wasn't Italy with a capital city and one, kingdom. What this actually was it was a bunch of city-states divided up, and they would actually have their own capitals on their own. You had the papal states in the middle, Florence, Venice, Milan, the kingdom of two Sicilies down here towards Naples. So the thing about it is we don't like to say Italy, but the Italian Peninsula. That's why it's oftentimes referred to as the Italian Renaissance. So here's what I'm going to need you to do, which is going to drive some of y'all nuts. You're going to need to pause this really, really quick, and we'll go ahead and do like this, right? We'll make a face real fast. You need to pause this real quick, and you need to draw a small version of this Italy in your notes. And yes, you need to do this because you're going to have to label. This is like the chart that you're going to have to do on the fill in the blank. You're going to have to actually label the certain cities and where they are and tell me how they made their money going into the Renaissance, right? So, okay, Pierre, so we're going to go ahead and get into a nice little pose. Okay, go ahead and pause.
Bag up, bag up. Bag up, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse. Oh, Lord. Lord, Jesus. Oh, Lord. Oh, Jesus. What?
So, okay, thank you for coming back. I appreciate y'all actually drawing that Italy for me. Really, really appreciate it. We are focusing particularly on 3 different city-states that made a ton of money during the Renaissance period going forward, okay? So here we go. We've got the first one up here in the top right-hand corner. So do me a favor, on your Italy, draw an arrow that goes to it, and you're going to actually put these 3 cities going onto it. Really? Why did I do that? Why would I do that? There we go. We're going to bring this first one over here, though. It's Venice, right? So Venice is going to make a ton of money going into the Renaissance, mainly due to the fact that they were the major trade importers and trade merchant guild importers to 2 exclusive different empires that had all those luxury goods we were talking about. They imported these fine items and luxury goods from the Byzantine Empire and the Ottomans, right? Now, the thing about it is if you were paying attention during the Middle Ages unit, you know the Byzantines and the Ottomans are very closely related. The Byzantine Empire is the Constantinople, former Byzantium, Nova Roma, started by Constantine, that whole area, right? The place that kept all the Roman stuff safe. Well, they're going to fall in 1453 to the Ottoman Turks, and they become the Ottoman Empire. Well, Venice had a trade agreement with both of those places, saying that you will sell your goods to no one else but us. We will be the ones that buy them, and we will create a trade embargo, and that's going to make Venice a lot of money, and it's going to make Constantinople/Istanbul a lot of money as well. So the Venetians were the traders that brought all these goods in, making them a ton of money. Well, then all the goods would actually move through North Italy and then get up into Europe. Well, they had to pass through this city, Milan, right? Milan then became what's known as a trade hub because all the goods came through there, and so they made a ton of money off the taxation of those different items and goods, right? So Milan made a ton of money. Now, since you have all of this money now floating around, Florence is going to then take on the responsibility of keeping that money in one place, right? They have created textile systems, and they also created banks. Florence is actually home to the very first large-scale banks inside of Europe, helping lead to the Italian Renaissance. And there's my wife and I actually in Florence, and it's a very beautiful city. I'm going there this summer. I'm very, very excited about it, right? So Florence is going to create the first banks, right? Since money is being made in Venice and money is being made in Florence, all that money needs to be kept safe somewhere. So a certain family opens up the very first banks in Florence, right? Now you have a fourth place that you need to label on this map as well. It's in the middle area, and it kind of represents how political and strong the Catholic Church was getting into this power dynamic. They're known as the Papal States, right? The Papal States is basically this big middle chunk area that has a capital city in Rome, and it's led and ran by the Pope, right? So it's a middle center section of Italy governed and ruled by the Catholic Church, and whatever Pope is in power is going to be the one that actually leads over that state. And the reason why I have Charlemagne right here is because Charlemagne actually helped start the Papal States when he kept it safe from Viking attack when he actually became Holy Roman Emperor. And then following his demise in this thing called the Treaty of Verdun, he made it so anytime a pope was in charge, every single pope would lead the Papal States, right? So that is a very, very important thing. And also what we're getting into as well, though, is actually, I think... All right, and so since it's been about 20 minutes now, we don't want to have this flip go any longer than it absolutely needs to, but that is where we're going to actually cut this off, and we are going to jump right in our next flip over the break. It'll be posted probably around Sunday or Monday. Your next flip is actually going to be talking about the growth of the Italian Renaissance and why it happened in Italy, and then we'll also get into some of the writings and some of the writers of the Renaissance in our next flip. So I'll talk to y'all about that soon. I know you guys are doing great. Remember to make sure that you did your warm-up, make sure that you did your flip, and then go ahead and get started on your artwork research, right? You remember, for your presentation, you want to focus on what makes your artwork good, who made it, when was it made, how big is it is, what is it made out of, different items like that. Look at your project sheet, help it guide you, okay? Use Khan Academy, YouTube, articles, legitimate researchable information, and you're going to just do a nice presentation on your artwork and what makes it awesome. You do not need to make a Google Doc. You do not need to make a Google slide. You will be allowed to bring one note card up to the front of the room, front and back, with your information on it, and then you'll be good to go. But I'll talk to y'all soon. If y'all have any other questions, let me know. I know y'all are doing great. Be nice to the sub and keep working hard, all right? Say bye, Pierre. Bye, buddy.